Hi guys, happy Wednesday. So we are going to finish up with our personal narratives. Um, as you remember yesterday, I read you guys The Grumpy Pirate to help you get started with what our prompt was going to be for this week. And if you remember, the Grumpy Pirate, he didn't like being a pirate, basically. Everything made him grumpy. He didn't like the way that the boat swayed. He didn't like the way that he had to do chores on the boat. He didn't like the food that they served. He was just grumpy, grumpy, grumpy. And then they went to the other pirates, had had enough and went to the queen to try to find some help, find a way to help him not be grumpy anymore. And that's the thing with being grumpy. If you're grumpy, it affects everybody around you, and they start to get grumpy. And so the queen gave him that parrot, and the parrot started being grumpy and repeating everything grumpy he said. And that made the pirate realize how annoying he sounded. And then the story flipped when the parrot repeated the pirate, and everybody started to laugh, and they thought it was so funny. And the grumpy pirate himself thought it was funny. And it was when the parrot tried to smile and with his beak, and it looked funny. And that's when the story changed, and Gus was no longer grumpy. And so that's what you guys were supposed to work on writing for this week, was to write about a time when you were grumpy, tell what it was that made you so grumpy, and how, or if something made you feel better. And remember to be specific and use your memories. So we went over my topic. The day I was really grumpy was when I didn't get to go on the camping trip. I was upset, and my mom tried to make me feel better. And then I ended up getting a camping trip of my own. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over the rough draft. I'm going to show you my rough draft, and we're going to do revising and editing. And so we have this little anchor chart in here to help you guys remember that when you revise, that's when we use arms. We add sentences or words, remove unneeded words or sentences, move to change a sentence or word placement, and substitute, which would be to change words completely or sentences for other sentences. Editing is when we use cups. So the capitalization, names, places, months, titles, and always the word I. Usage, match nouns and verbs correctly. And punctuation, you need to make sure you have periods, quotes, commas, question marks, exclamation points where in their proper places and used correctly. And spelling, check all words and use a dictionary if you need to. So here is my little rough draft. So I titled my story, The Day I Was Really Grumpy. So have you ever had a day when you were really grumpy? A day that you wish would just go away? Well, I have those days sometimes. I remember one really grumpy day very well. It happened on a warm summer weekend. I was about 7 years old. My dad and my brother were in a group with the YMCA that was like Boy Scouts. They got to go do all kinds of cool stuff. I was always jealous of them spending so much time together. Then on that warm summer Friday, they were packing up to go on a camping trip the next morning. They were going to spend the weekend camping in the woods, and I wanted to go. I remember crying and pouting about how I wanted to go. I remember telling them, "You guys are mean and stupid. I want to go. It's not fair." Then storming off to my room and slamming my door. My mom promised we would have a fun weekend, and we did. Once I went to bed and woke up in a better mood. The rest of the weekend was filled with doing things I wanted to do just with my mom. The best part was when my dad and brother came back, my dad promised to take me on a camping trip. A few weeks later, we did just that, and it was a lot of fun. Being grumpy is an ugly feeling. The good news is we can decide to change our mood to make our day better. So that is my rough draft. And when you're reading through it again, you'll find mistakes that you made. So what you're going to do is you're going to copy your whole rough draft, and then you will paste it right in here. And then this is where you're going to make your revisions so that you can turn in a nice clean copy. So let's go ahead and look at the mistakes that I made. So the thing that I'm noticing here, one thing I noticed right off the bat was have you ever had a bad day when you feel really grumpy? And I put a period. So have you ever, that's a question. So I'm going to need to change that to a question mark. A day that you wish would just go away. So that's another question, so that's correct. Well, I have those days sometimes. This I is a word that needs to be capitalized. I remember one really grumpy day very well. It happened on a warm summer weekend. I was about 7 years old. My dad and my brother were in a group with the YMCA that was like Boy Scouts. So Boy Scouts is the name of an organization, so that needs to be capitalized. So I don't like the way the sentence sounds. My dad and my brother. So we already know that if this story was written by me and I'm talking about my brother, I don't need this my here because you already know that I'm talking about my brother. And especially since I already put it here, my dad and brother. Is that right? You would just say my dad and brother were in a group with the YMCA that was like the Boy Scouts. You're going to put the Boy Scouts here. They got to go do all kinds of cool stuff. So I don't really like the way this sentence sounds either. The first thing I'm noticing is I put a question mark here, but I don't hear a question. I hear a statement. They got to go do all kinds of cool stuff. I would put they did all kinds of cool stuff. I was always jealous of them spending so much time together. Then, on that warm summer Friday, they were packing up to go on a camping trip the next morning. So this sentence I think needs to be fixed. I would say instead of then on, I would say one. We're going to change this to say one and take out that. So it'll say one warm summer Friday. They were packing up to go on a camping trip the next morning. Now I started a new sentence here, but I didn't capitalize that first word, so we're going to fix that. They were going to spend the weekend camping in the woods, and I wanted to go. I remember crying and pouting about how I wanted to go. I remember telling them, so I'm repeating myself. I remember crying and then I remember telling them. So I'm going to change this to say something different. So instead of saying I remember crying and pouting and about how I wanted to go, I remember telling them, I'm just going to change the second part to say, I'm going to say I shouted So then I'll put, I shouted, and then I'm going to put my quote. You guys are mean and stupid. I want to go. It's not fair. And then I have my exclamation point and my close quotes. Then I need to put a period here. And then we're going to start here. Then storming off to my room and slamming my door. So that doesn't sound quite right either. So we need to change that up. After saying what I said, I shouted that I wanted to go. It's not fair. I'm going to change this to say I stormed off to my room. And slammed my door. And that sounds much better. My mom promised we would have a fun weekend, and we did. My mom promised we would have a fun weekend. I'm going to take this part out. And I'm just going to put a period here and then say, I went to bed and woke up in a better mood. The rest of the weekend was filled with doing things I wanted to do, just with my mom. The best part was when my dad and brother came back. I'm going to put a comma here. My dad promised to take me on a camping trip. A few weeks later, he did just that, and it was a lot of fun. Now I started a new sentence here, but I didn't put a capital, so I'm going to change that. Being grumpy is an ugly feeling. The good news is we can decide to change our mood to make our day better. And that is my cleaned up story. So then once you get to this point, all you need to do is submit and you'll be ready to go. Have a good rest of your week, guys.